Thank you so much for that presentation. And I think we can go ahead and move on to the next section of the conference. Can everyone hear me okay? All right, so I hope you guys had a great lunch and you guys enjoyed the discussion we had with Dr. Oklahoman. It was a really pleasure being a part of that, especially just who he is and how much knowledgeable he is. So it was a real pleasure. So I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as we enjoyed filming that for you guys. And I think you brought up a great point about being bigger than yourself and being an expert of the heart. And I think our Krishna Award winner truly embodies that idea. So congratulations again to Jennifer and Spike. We're all very thankful for your service, not only to the community, but also your support and advocacy for your fellow students. So thank you so much, Jen. So with that, we can get started with the next session. So I'm Ridwan Aziz. I'm a second year medical student here at the University of Oklahoma College of Medicine. And I'm also the vice chair of this year's conference. And like I said, I'll be moderating this talk today. And just before I introduce
Ridwan, you just muted yourself.
on mute. Okay, sorry. I was just making sure that Councilwoman Nikki Nice is on with us.
I'm here.
All right. Nice to see you. So first and foremost, I think our next speaker, Councilwoman Nikki Nice, is one of the most brilliant and important political figure and advocate for our city. We're truly honored to have her here with us today and get some of her thoughts on some of these prominent issues. Councilwoman Nikki Nice was elected to serve as Ward 7's representative on the Oklahoma City Council in 2018 and will begin a second term in April after running unopposed in the election a couple of weeks ago. She's the 10th woman and second woman of color to serve on the council since the council's incorporation in 1890. Councilwoman Nice serves on the MAPS 3 City Advisory Board and the Zoological Trust and the Trails Advisory Committee. She received a Bachelor of Arts degree in broadcasting from the HBCU Langston University. She studied abroad in places like the Gambia and Senegal. To the Oklahoma City Council, Councilwoman Nice brings a wealth of leadership and community service, and it's a privilege to have her here with us today. So if you guys could give her a round of applause using the little emoji clap reaction, just so she understands how much we appreciate her. So thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you all, and may I say congratulations to Jennifer and Spike as well for all your efforts and for all of the nominees for everything that you're doing for the areas in which you are serving.
Yeah, thank you. So just to keep on with the introduction, so I think our attendees may not know who you are outside of your bio. So in terms of introduction, which part of your identity do you highlight if you were to give a quick elevator pitch besides being a councilwoman?
Well, the main thing I'd say is I was born and raised in Northeast Oklahoma City. So I'm honored to serve in the same place where I was raised. So everything that means everything to me that grew me and helped me to be the young woman that I am today, I still say young, is a part of being a part of Ward 7. And obviously it was a village that raised me to be here and to be able to do the work that I'm doing. So the work continues. My background, I went to Millwood from preschool to 8th grade. I graduated from Northeast High School. And as you heard, I finished at Langston University. And I've had quite a few different jobs, like I'm sure a lot of you have as well. So I worked at Starbucks for almost 8 years. I was a radio and TV personality in Oklahoma City as well. And those were a lot of the things that's just that community and just being engaged and involved are all the pieces to my puzzle that help me to navigate through the circles and through the many avenues of me being able to currently serve right now.
Thank you so much for that. And just to reiterate, the structure of this conference, the morning sections were about discussing issues that we identified, and the second half of the conference is going to focus on some of the solutions that we think need to be implemented. So with that being said, what motivated you to become a councilwoman?
Well, I think that's really a loaded question. And the reason I say that is because a lot of folks don't, some do, but a lot of folks don't think about running for office. And this was never really in my purview to run for office. It happened based on what happened to our previous council member having to resign abruptly. And the opportunity arose. You know, I've been very active in the party in which I'm a part of, as far as learning and understanding just the background and how to help others get elected. So that's always been the space that I wanted to hold, was how to be in the back and help others. And when it came for this opportunity, the question was, and I asked everybody else too, well, who's going to run? Who's going to do this? We need somebody to do this. And as you pointed others, just always know the fingers are always pointing back at you too. And that's what happened in my case. Many others were just saying, Nikki, why don't you do it? And I was very hesitant to do this work, because I know, one, you know, like I said, it wasn't something that I had planned on doing, but at the same time, just being able to have all of those jobs, I realize now all of those different things led me through this path. So those are reasons why I decided to run. So I am, again, thankful that I was successful in winning in 2018. And I am extremely thankful that I was able to run unopposed in this election for 2020, 2021.
And I don't think people understand how huge that is. So congratulations on that again. So, I mean, you talked about some of the stuff that motivated you. And I think it's very hard for like people to just like, you've got this direction you're going, right? And just deviate and find the kind of like the energy. So like not always serve yourself, but serve other people. So what would you kind of say to someone who's on a certain path, but then of course there are like all these other issues going on that needs to be fixed in terms of like finding that strength and just like continue on your own path, but then being able to also like help other people out like you're doing?
Well, I think the awards that you just had, that's a testament of being able to serve, do what you're doing, and also be in the community to serve others. And I think the power is closest to the people. So that's, you have to be close to the people in order to understand what's really happening around you. I mean, I know I serve Ward 7, so our city is 620 square miles, but my particular ward is 130 of those 620. So I rely heavily on other folks in different neighborhoods and different areas of Ward 7 and communities for them to let me know what's happening where they are. Because I can tell you every neighbor on my street, on my block. But at the same time, because the area is so vast, I have to rely on others that are within the community and in the area to help me, to help them in being able to ensure that we have equity and we have the things that we need first and foremost for Ward 7, and as we proceed also for Oklahoma City.
Thanks so much for that. Another question we had, like, what are some of your achievements, accomplishment so far as a councilwoman? Do you want to highlight some of those and just so people know like some of the works you've been doing and you'll continue to do?
Well, I think it's always ever evolving. So I can't remember everything. So please forgive me that I don't have it in front of me to tell you everything. But I know when I first got elected, the main issue was addressing food insecurity. So we've been able to work through different avenues with different community partners and churches, just all hands on deck, being able to create ways access for food for our community. And we still have work to do when it comes to being able to do that. So that's one that's ever evolving. We did pass our MAPS 4 for our city in December of 2019. And thank you to all of the voters that did that, because it has helped to ensure that we have equity for Ward 7 and Northeast Oklahoma City, as well as the Green Pasture Spencer area. So it was very intentional for us to add the different highlights for this particular MAPS project, and out of the 16 projects for us to highlight and ensure we have the bus rapid transit that's going to be running down Northeast 23rd Street from 23rd Northeast and Northwest 23rd Street, for us to have more bus stops, for us to have more street lights, for us to have community gardens, for us to be able to have a brand new community center as far as our young people are concerned, creating equity for the new youth centers that are coming. That's something that we were able to put in the language, because we're building one right now, the Willie D. Johnson Recreation Center, and that was because of our 2017 GO bond. But it was important for me to ensure that as these new centers come along, that there is equity. So we have the language in there that when these new centers come along and they have things that were not placed, other amenities that were not placed in our Douglas Center, which is now the Willie D. Johnson, they will also receive those same upgrades for this particular center. So being able to do those things, affordable housing, addressing mental health, as far in the diversion hub, Palomar, all of those pieces of our neighborhoods that we have for MAPS 4, those are really significant pieces that we were all able to add to this puzzle of MAPS 4 and being able to vote on that. I'm still trying to think of some other things, but I'll probably just pop them off as the conversation continues. My mind will probably come back to me. But I know even with Moon, we wanted to make sure, because now Moon is going to be a middle school, and it has turned into a middle school, we were able to get the reinvestment efforts going as far as transforming that school and putting the money into the school to have the young people be able to say, this is our school, and they receive the same upgrades as other schools did in our community.
Thank you so much for that. And I think that's like one of the reasons we brought you here, because we know you're a very accomplished woman. So we wanted our conference comers to see that and see just being exposed to someone who's doing really great work out there. And I know that doesn't come easy. That comes especially looking at the state that we're in. So how do you help foster like accepting new ideas, like with your position?
Well, I think it's really just having folks at the table that can either relate to what's happening, and also bringing those people in who have no idea what you're talking about, because those are ways we have. I guess it's we have the change of the guards. You have your older generation, you have the middle generation, you have our young people, and all of us have all of these different ideals because we come from those different generations. So my thought process is clearly different than some of my seniors that are in my community. But when my seniors came to me and said, we don't want our community center, our health and wellness center, to be placed in a certain area, the question came, okay, how do we get that done for you all? So we went to work to see how we can make sure our seniors were engaged in the process, and bringing other people to the table to assist us in helping us to cultivate the seniors' minds of what a potential new center would look like for them. And even with our young people, as far as we have the Willie D. Johnson, I go back to that. It was important for us to ensure that we have young hands that are a part of the projects that we're doing for this particular center. So it's really just making sure you have to create the space. Maybe that's basically what I'm saying. You just have to make sure you have the right people at the table to ensure those pieces of equity that you want pertaining to whether it's health access, whether it's just transportation access. You need to bring all of those folks, whether you know they like to be a part of the conversation or not. If you know people that have been impacted, you bring them to the table. If you know people that need to hear how people have been impacted, you bring them to the table. And a lot of times we have to mediate through that. And I think about even our developers and our residents in our neighborhoods. Those are things where you have two totally separate ways of life. One, you have a developer who wants to build, and then you have a neighbor who says, this is my neighborhood. So how do you make those things work and bring them together? So it's just being able to listen. I think that's the main thing. You just have to listen and listen clearly to what people are saying and go from there with their ideas and see how you can make a healthy compromise when it comes to what you're trying to do for both parties.
And I think that's a really great point, and it definitely correlates to us as like health professionals and future health professionals in regards to, I feel like you're kind of like acting as a mediator between like your residents and the government and just trying to find that balance. And I think that's going to be our job moving forward, is like advocating for our patients and try to like you're bridging the gap between the government and your residents, and we're gonna have to be able to like bridge the gap between our patients and like the healthcare system. So I think that's like that definitely correlates, and I hope people listening to that in terms of like just getting some of the ideas. It's all about like just try to find that middle line, because I think a big conversation right now that's going on is about like who who starts the conversation, right? In terms of like who's educating who. I don't know if you've been hearing about that a little bit. Like whose job is it to like educate who? Is it the people who are going through it? Because like you said, you have people who have like no idea what's going on, and then is it their job to like demand change, or is it the people who are in power who don't see what's going on? It's their job to go do the reading. What do you, if that makes sense, what do you think about that? Because I feel like that's a huge conversation right now about like who's educating who. Because I feel like there's certain communities that are saying they're tired of being the one like just teaching other people about some of the disparities and stuff like that that's going on in the communities. Does that make sense?
Yes. And to your point, I believe it's everyone's responsibility. If you are knowledgeable and you know there are folks that can't advocate for themselves, it's your responsibility to do that. If you are talking to folks who can't advocate for themselves and they're educating you on their issues, it's up to you to now carry that to who those policymakers should be to make that change. So it's a system of give and take, in my opinion, because I think of how we have to advocate for a lot of our neighbors and our residents who may not even know what I do as far as their issue may be concerned. And a lot of times, if I can't help them, I will find the person who can. And again, I go back to listen. You have to ensure that you're listening on all sides. You have to make sure you're listening, especially when it comes to you all as young people, and to bridge the access, you have to listen. If you are going into any situation as if you know it, and you already know better than that person you're talking to, you're approaching the situation wrong. You're approaching the conversation wrong, and you're not going to get the outcome that's desired for that person, that's harm for that person, and it's also detrimental to you, because you could have taken the opportunity to actually listen and understand where someone else is coming from, a different background, a different culture, just a different neighborhood of how they live, how things happen, and what the outcome they expect to be. And that's up to us and me as a policymaker to ensure that I'm looking at the things that are happening around me, but I want to make sure that I'm doing thoughtful things for the people, so it won't be harmful, that it'll be helpful if we're all working together. And even that is very, it's not easy. It's not easy to do. So again, you have to approach it in the way of being able to listen, hear, and learn from the people you expect to make change for.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for that. And I think the last time we talked, you were talking about how the OUHSC or OU health in general feels like it's a bubble, and then its neighborhood, like everyone else around is just outside of that bubble, and like we're just here, like in our own little bubble. So that brings up our next question: is that do you think that the whole UL, like in the OUHSC community in general, is serving its neighbors adequately? And if not, how do you think that we can improve on that?
Well, I think anything can be done better. Even what I do in my space, I know I can do better in a lot of different areas. So I say OU Health is no different. Unfortunately, due to many years of things that have taken place in the community has not felt comfortable in different aspects. There are some that do, but then there are a lot that don't. And my only way of encouragement for OU medicine or OU Health to be in the community is to be in the community. You have to be in the community. In my opinion, the hospital in the area of campus is a barrier. You have to be welcoming for the people. So you all as students and even the physicians, move into the neighborhoods. If you don't move into the neighborhoods, which you don't have to move into the neighborhoods, take a walk at lunchtime, walk through the areas of our community so you can see the impacts of what's happening in the places where we are. So you can see if you have a different eye or you know someone that can help in all of these different ways, that can bring those resources to our area of this city. How can you all in the work that you're doing, just hearing again, as we heard about all of those award recipients, how can we bring all of those pieces that you all are being a part of as your volunteer hours to this community? It's to me, when we look at the health outcomes that are 18 years less for just the 73111, I'm appalled to hear that and say it every time, because I know there's a whole medical campus that's within miles of this one zip code where we can make the best impact to lessen those health outcomes. So it's being, again, in the community, working with the churches. We have many churches in our community, work with them. We have a lot of nonprofits, find out who they are. We have quite a few different senior and facilities as far as housing facilities as well. The Jelks in McGuire Plaza is right across the street from OU Health. You can create a program to make sure, or a mentee program to make sure you all have one of those residents that you care for and understand what's happening in their family, because I understand there's a lot of them that live independently, so they don't have anyone for them. But as students of health and as all of us as conduits of our community, it's important for us to be engaged, and it's also important for us to be intentional. And I know there are a lot of things that I may not know about that you all are doing, so I don't want to take away from the work that is being done, and we appreciate that. I think about our COVID clinic that we had yesterday with OU Health at Millwood. It was a beautiful thing that happened for our residents to get the COVID-19 vaccine. So that's the start. It's things like that you have to be in the community in order for us to see you all, know you all by name, so you know us by name. So therefore, when we come see any physician that's at this hospital, that we know you understand what aches we have, and you will take us seriously when we say we hurt.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And I think one of the biggest idea of this talk was like in terms of like advocacy and just advocating for our patient and just our community in general. So I think our next question is, what are some tangible ways that we can support new policies at the community level? If that makes sense, I can ask that question again.
No, I understand. As far as policies on the local level, I think one of the things that we were on the local level, we were able to do as far as food insecurity is to create the Healthy Neighborhood overlay ordinance, and that's just for the 73111 zip code. So when I think about that, as far as food insecurity is concerned, what are the ways that we as OU Health can ensure that we're making ways and creating better access for these opportunities in our community when they leave or while they're there, while we're caring for them? Are we doing the work to see if they are food insecure at home? Are we helping to make sure they have the resources after they leave? Understanding all of those pieces. And I think even as we advocate on the local level, we also have to look at how the impact of our state laws and the things that have taken place have more impact on the local level. So it's just advocacy on all levels, because due to things that happen on the state level, it can say we can or can't do things on the local level. So we truly have to ensure that we're looking at all pieces of advocacy, all pieces of legislation, and how that can, one piece of legislation from that state level can impact us in our own home, or you as a resident working at a local hospital in the community in which you serve.
Yeah, okay. That was a great answer. And in terms of like just staying informed, is there like, how do we stay informed about potential new policies that are being discussed or brought before the council?
Well, I think when we have council meetings, it's every other Tuesday. So there is an agenda that is posted the Friday prior to our okc.gov website. You will have to look and search for the agenda, but it'll tell you the things that we're going to look at. Normally, when that Friday, you see it hit that Friday afternoon, you may see the next couple days in the news or newspaper about things that may be coming as far as conversations to our community. But if there is something specific that you want to advocate for, let's look at talking to whoever represents you. If you don't live in Ward 7, find out who represents you throughout Oklahoma City, which ward you are a part of, so we can look at how we can address and mention those things to whoever that council member may be. And that's how it starts. Speaking to that council member, if there's a particular subject or passion that you have special interest in, and if there is nothing on the books for as far as our city charter or as far as our state constitution and the things that we need to do, let's look at how we can advocate for those things on the local level, and also how we can advocate for those things on the state level to ensure that we're creating space for those who need it the most.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And also, like in regards to the city, more specifically, what would you say is Oklahoma City's greatest need when it comes to achieving health equity?
Because we're so rural, I think it's really hard for us to be able to get the attention that we need in a lot of our areas. So I think that's the most important part, is trying to work through navigating how we create those pieces of access and equity, because you have some rural areas in our city that you can't get immediate access attention to if you have a fire need, as far as our IMSA is concerned, as far as our police department is concerned, and our fire department. So it's being able to create infrastructure to help us in navigating ways that we can create better equity and access. And looking at that as well, it's trying to ensure that we have, when we're looking at health equity, do we have enough hospitals or even clinics that are serving our community and our residents? I think of Northeast Oklahoma City, and we have a mental health need. Do we have a mental health facility or something that can serve our residents that are experiencing mental illness? And right now, if there is, a lot of folks don't know where, and a lot of folks don't know how to access it. So it's being able to create those spaces. Right now, obviously with our pharmacy, we only have one right now located in the Northeast quadrant at the CVS. So we're working through creating another pharmacy. I know there are some others located, but in that 73111, we have only one. So being able to create access. So it's about creating access and equity, but it's a very slow process. And I think that's the unfortunate piece. It's always a slow process because of how local government works and just how government works in general. And that was the one thing no one told me when I was running for office, that it would be slow for us to get the things that we needed the most in our community. But some things were immediate as far as us being able to enact this healthy neighborhood overlay. It took us about almost a year to bring it into fruition. But because of that, now we also have a grocery store that's coming to the community because of that as well. So it's a lot of different pieces you have to put in front in order for you to see it into fruition.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up that grocery store. Like, how's she gonna forget that? That's so huge, because that's like one of the ways I actually first heard about just like some of the work that you're doing. And I think it's going to make dramatic changes to the neighborhood. And so with that, how would the new grocery store help improve the overall health of the residents of Ward 7?
Well, I think this particular area of the community is going to create health access for not just everyone, well, as far as a grocery aspect, but also for our seniors, because right behind the grocery store that's being built, we are preparing to build our senior health and wellness center for seniors 50 and up. So this is going to be a true campus of wellness, if you will, where we'll be able to address our seniors, and we'll be able to also alleviate some food insecure residents that may be seeking food options or just having access in general as far as food options are concerned. But this is one piece. We also have on 23rd Street, the Restore Market that's coming, the community market that's coming off of 23rd and Rhode Island. So we're looking forward to the spring of, and hopefully within the next couple months, of what that particular area can bring for our community, due to us losing the grocery store that we had on Northeast 23rd and MLK. So it's being able to have a lot of community partners. We have the Lillian Timber Farms that's also in our community that took over a vacant lot and started growing fresh vegetables and for the community. So it's small increments of progress that we've seen in our community that will continue to create sustainability in the months and years to come.
Yeah, and I think one of the bigger topics right now that's going on is like the vaccine and some of the, I guess, injustice that's going on. But then another aspect of it is just the justified hesitance in the Black community and like all the minority community to take in the COVID-19 vaccine. As a resident of Ward 7 and as a Black woman yourself, how do healthcare providers collaborate with your community while still being historically informed? Because I think that's one of the biggest things that gets pushed back. It's like you just see like, oh, like certain people are refusing the vaccine, but no one ever looks at like why they're refusing the vaccine. So how do we collaborate and do better?
Well, it goes back to the beginning of our conversation. We have to make sure we're listening. We have to make sure that if someone says they don't want to take it and why, we need to listen to that. We also should educate ourselves on just the systemic issues that we've had when it comes to hospitals, when it comes to healthcare for Black communities, when we think about vaccines, when we think about the Tuskegee experiment, when we think about all of these different things that have taken place in our communities. And most recently, when we think of the doctor Dr. Moore, who passed away, and said, as a physician, said that she was not receiving adequate health care as she was experiencing and passing away from COVID. You know, we have to make sure we're listening. I can't stress that enough. When we say we hurt, listen, believe us. If you hurt, others hurt too. And I think listening and reading and understanding more of just her story in general, and a study that was done most recently, I believe some of that came from a 2016 study of the ailments that a lot of folks feel African Americans can bear pain longer than others. And we can't practice like that. We have to understand when people say they hurt, they hurt. We have to, again, continue to listen. But when it comes to the COVID vaccine and just understanding and testing for COVID in general, because of the ways that it came out as far as being able to reach our communities, the process was very slow. So therefore, it made it more difficult for a lot of minority communities to really, truly grasp that this was being done in effort to help alleviate or understand if they have COVID, one, and two, to help to understand this is something that can help you in the process to ensure that we're all working together to stay safe. And I think about even as we had to do a mask mandate in July of last year, when we had that conversation, and I had to talk to my colleagues and help them to understand that when we look at other cities, when we look at other populations, criminalization of what a mask can do. So it's being able to understand all of these different parts of now what COVID has brought, and exposing a lot of those things too, because we already knew there were health inequities, but this particular pandemic has shown it at an alarming rate of being able to see by the numbers and by the care how different it has been for your communities of color compared to underserved communities, and compared to your underrepresented communities, compared to those who have access. It has been clearly different all across the board. And those are things that it's very hard to explain because it happens different ways in different cities. Ours, as far as Oklahoma City, and I say this very reluctantly, but thankfully, our numbers in Northeast Oklahoma City, when we saw the alarming rates for other major cities for African American communities, it did not take off in the way that it did in those cities for us. And we're thankful for that. And I think some say it's because we're rural. Some say it's, there's so many different reasons why people say that could have and could not have happened. But at the same time, when we get to months after they go by and folks are tired of going through the motions every single day, and we get lax in the process, the names start getting a little closer to those who are experiencing COVID or those who are passing away from COVID. So it's being able to, again, insert ourselves in the community, being able to have those healthy conversations, but also, again, listening and understanding the systemic racism that has been held in healthcare for us to bridge those conversations once more, for people to really trust the process. And also it takes folks who are minorities, just truthfully, to be in the spaces of medicine, for us to see. We have to see the reflection of those in these spaces too, for us to really take on and say, okay, you're in this space. How have you been able to handle what has taken place where you are? So it's a lot of those conversations as far as being able to just fully address. And I know that's not an answer, because it's really not one way to approach it. There's so many different ways that we have to approach our communities in being sensitive to what they're saying, and also intentional in listening to what they're saying.
I think that's a great answer. Looking at the time here. I think I'll ask this last question and then open it up to a participant if they have other questions. I think you brought up a good point about like just being tired in general. In regards to the pandemic, I feel like it's been like difficult for everyone, right? We've all been going through this since like February, March, and like everyone like is tired of it. And I think the most natural thing is like everyone likes the least resistant way. So we want to do the easiest thing. And the easiest thing, especially with the vaccine being rolled out, is just like forget about everything that's happened. Forget about everything that's been exposed and just go back to normal like none of this happened. So I think the last question for you is how do we make sure that we don't stop talking about the systemic racism and the need for structural changes in terms of moving forward once like COVID is gone and like we're back to normal? How do we not forget everything that was exposed by COVID?
Well, I think every day when you drive away from where you are should be a sign for you to never forget, just because of where you're placed. And I was reading in the chat, and I think it's the person who wrote that, and it's important for us to remember, and you all may not, as young people, and some of you may not be from Northeast Oklahoma City or Oklahoma City at all, but there was a lot of distrust in the community because of the way that OU came into the community and taking literally gentrification, displacement. Those things happen for OU Health to be in the community. And that has created a distrust as well. So I hope you all realize when you drive, even if you drive to get something to eat and come back, you are seeing the effects of systemic racism. You are seeing the effects of gentrification. You are seeing the effects of displacement. And it's up to you all, again, to be the conduits of speaking to community to understand what those hurts are, speaking to the community to understand how we can navigate through adding or just creating newer ways of caring for our residents that are within the community. Because again, I want you all to remember the health outcomes that I expressed, 18 years less. That's a whole graduate, high school graduate. That's a young person whose life is no longer with us because of them being subjected to living in one zip code that again is within your reach of where you are. So how can we work through that? I think that's the most important thing I want to leave with you all today is how do we work through that? And I know, again, I talk about some of the things I just remembered, our Northeast Health Task Force that we created in the ways of us to address food insecurity, but we also wanted to ensure that we address that health outcome. So we're creating that space for us to be able to bring in physicians, bring in all of those folks that we know that do work in whatever the health piece may be, whether it again be the mental illness aspect, food, if it's the social justice, whatever it, environmental justice. All of those folks, bring them to the table to see how we can do better work in Northeast Oklahoma City, collaborating together to do those things to better serve our residents that we have around us.
Thank you so much for that. So now I think we'd like to open it up to questions. If you guys want to post any questions that you guys have in the chat.
And if you don't mind, is it possible for me to share my screen? I do.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay. I wanted to, I know when I was asked to speak, I was asked to also bring mention to a lot of our physicians that we've had as far as the past in Ward 7. So I just wanted to highlight a few for you all to know about some of the roots of our community and who have been a part of our community as well. Oh, where am I? So what this is basically just a presentation for you all to see the Ward 7 Black History. I wanted to introduce you to some of the council members that were also health professionals. So just a little bit of background for Ward 7. There were originally 4 wards in 1966. It was expanded to 8 wards, and we received our first African-American physician and council member. His name was Dr. Charles Atkins. And again, when this was approved, he was appointed to fill the unexpired term of a Ward 2 member who had passed away. And he was a family doctor, and he moved to Oklahoma City in 1951. And he had been voted Doctor of the Year. He organized American State Bank to help the community in Northeast Oklahoma City. He led job training, employment, and this was the first, again, appointed Ward 7 council member, Dr. Charles Atkins. And there is a Atkins independent living for a lot of our residents. It's in located right off of Northeast 23rd and Martin Luther King, right across from the library. And that's where, in his honor, it is named. Another physician that was also Ward 7 council member was Dr. A.L. Dow, and he was the first elected African-American to serve in Ward 7. And he took his seat in 1967, which was a year after Dr. Charles Atkins, and he served until 1972. He's originally from Virginia, but he migrated here after World War II, and he was a very successful optometrist. And one of the beautiful things and unsung things that I think a lot of us may or may not know about Dr. Dow is in 1961, he challenged the Oklahoma City public school system because his son was a student at Douglas High School, and there was a technology class that his son wanted to take at Northeast. So he challenged the school district because the school was segregated at the time. And therefore, we had a federal judge, Bohannon, he ruled in favor of Dr. Dow and ordered the complete desegregation of the Oklahoma City public schools. And so while Dr. Dow was serving on the council, he fought for open housing ordinances, he allowing Blacks to live anywhere in our city, because there were ordinances that had been in place prior that only allowed us to be in really not past 8th Street of Northeast Oklahoma City. And he also helped with the first Black teller being hired at the First National Bank, as well as some other accomplishments. And there's an A.L. Dow Bridge that's located on Northeast 23rd Street going east over the highway, I-35. And another important thing about Dr. Dow is for us to realize and understand, he was also very instrumental in working around the sanitation worker strike that happened for our city as well. And I interviewed his son last year for Black History Month just to talk, so he could share some of the things that Dr. A.L. Dow did. And he said one of the things that he remembers distinctly is that his father, Dr. Dow, in council meetings would stand up and not sit down because he was protesting the injustice that was happening for African Americans in Ward 7. So he was advocating on that behalf. Another person is Dr. Byron Biscoe, and he was a dentist, and he was appointed right after Dr. Dow, and he was in the Morgan building. So the Morgan building is right off of 4th Street. It's right off of 4th and Lincoln. So I know some of us see that lonely little building that sits next to the Foster Center. This was the Morgan building, and this is the original place where Dr. Biscoe was a dentist, and he saw patients, and he served until 1972. So a couple of other physicians that I just wanted to mention, and there are so many more, but I referenced these because these were distinctly a part of Ward 7 in the history that I've been able to find. This is Dr. Slaughter, and he was the first non-white doctor that we had in Oklahoma City. And he was one of African Americans community most prominent and influential medical, business, and civic leaders. And he founded the state's African American Medical Association, the very first. And he helped to create a lot of different buildings. There was a slaughter hall where a lot of folks would go in Deep Deuce area. He also campaigned for World War II bonds, public amenities such as the YMCA, and for a new high school for our residents. And as an entrepreneur, he developed several residential plats in Northeast Oklahoma City, and currently on 50th and I-235, you can still see the Slaughter Mansion as it still stands. And he was also a trustee of Meharry Medical College. And Meharry Medical College, if you had not heard of it before, is the first medical school for African Americans in the South, and it was located in Nashville, Tennessee. So please keep that in mind as we continue some of our other stories of Dr. Slaughter and that particular connection of the medical college. And this is Dr. Haywood, and Dr. Haywood was a pioneering physician and business leader in Oklahoma City in the early 1900s. And he came to Oklahoma when he was sick, and he was on a train to California. And when he was leaving the train in Guthrie, he visited Dr. Slaughter. And Dr. Slaughter convinced him to stay in Oklahoma, and they worked together to help improve medical conditions for Blacks who had to be treated in homes because they were barred from hospitals. And Dr. Haywood founded the Utopia Hospital, which is the first Black hospital, and later became the first Black physician at University Hospital, which is now OU Medical Center, which is now where you all are currently. And he had a lot of different advocacies, and he bought the Haywood building in Deep Deuce in 1938. And there were different uses that were used out of that. He was also the co-founder of the Oklahoma Medical, Dental, and Pharmaceutical Association, an African American Medical Association, and he served 14 years as a Chief African American Health Officer of Oklahoma County, and he passed away at the age of 88. So this is a picture, as you see, of the first hospital for Blacks in Oklahoma City, Utopia Hospital. And if any of you have been in the Deep Deuce area, you've seen the Deep Deuce Grill. This is a building that was built. And if you walk in and look towards the area where these doors are and look down, you'll see a red door, and it says Dr. Haywood. So there's still pieces and remnants of Dr. Haywood that still exist in this building. And it's also written on the building itself. And the last but not least, I wanted to introduce you to Dr. Finley. And where we know now as the Aloft Hotel used to sit this gentleman's practice. And he was born in Arkansas, and he attended Wilberforce University in Ohio. And afterwards, he went to Meharry Medical School in Nashville, and he married Dr. Slaughter's daughter. And they came to Oklahoma, and Dr. Slaughter brought him here in 1937. And he began his practice again at a time where Blacks were in demand because most white doctors and other professionals refused to serve Blacks. So he opened his first office at 324 Northeast 2nd. And then he moved in 1951 to Northeast 2nd in Walnut. So he made tremendous contributions to the community. And one of the things I also want to let you know is that he gave more than 14 lots to Central Oklahoma Habitat for Humanity. So his philanthropy, he also did a lot of things in Africa. In 1966, he went to Africa and funded construction of the Finley Clinic, which is now in what we know as Congo. He opened a hospital there in 1969 and conducted medical missions in 1972 in Ethiopia. And in 2006, we had the Walnut Avenue Bridge. It was restored and renamed in Dr. Finley's honor. So this is the area of the Finley building where that particular corner where we now call the Aloft Hotel. And as we all go over and above across that bridge every day, we should know that it is named after Dr. Finley, and Dr. Finley made great contributions to our community. So with that, I just wanted to let you all know who some of these physicians were. And granted, there are many, many more for us to talk about, but these were the ones that I wanted to introduce to you all because there are still remnants of them that exist in our community. So please know when you drive outside of the area where you are serving that there is still rich history around you, and it's up to us to make sure we keep the names of these physicians alive. And I'm sure a lot of you probably hadn't heard of Dr. Haywood, but he was a physician, the first Black physician that was at OU and practiced at OU. So I think it's very important, or University Hospital. So it's very important for us to continue to realize and understand those Black physicians who made a way for our community.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Do we have any questions in the chat?
Yes, I can make sure you have the slides. Well, I can share my other project if you want me to, and then I'll be through with y'all.
I actually did have a question.
Okay.
Regarding like perpetuating the ability for minority students to have access to STEM training. How can we kind of encourage that as far as schools go or in like the family environment? I know that we have scholarship programs and things like that, but a lot of times I think systemic racism kind of discourages families from wanting their children to go out and try those things.
Well, I think even with that, as we talked about it, it's not just one way to approach that. And in my opinion, when I think about STEM, and those are some of the things that I've been trying to figure out myself, how can we integrate like robotics and coding and some of these other ways for young people to be creative and integrate those ideas into, maybe if it's not a church, and that's a lot of our Black communities, that's where we get our information, it's church, and some of our other nonprofits or our libraries. But we have to create space, and I think that's the problem. We aren't creating the space. We know it exists, so we aren't creating the space. And I do want to commend Thick Descriptions for the work that they are doing. And we know there are some others, like there's a STEM program at Rose State. I know there's a robotics program at Millwood, and being able to use the practices of OSSM, the young people there. I was talking to them most recently about seeing how they could start a club in one of our community partners areas, in our libraries again. So it's being able to just connect and create space. I do have a dear friend a couple of years ago. He just wanted to bring coding to the neighborhood, and he literally set up tables and computers in his house, in his living room. And he brought us in as mentors for these young people, and we all learned how to code together, for those of us who may not have had coded before, which I was one of them. So it was really exciting for me to also be a part of seeing these types of things. So it's grassroots efforts of being able to do that. So I hope that answered your question. If not, I can try again.
No, it did. Thank you.
Okay, Councilwoman, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. Thank you for that presentation. That was amazing. Just thank you for your work. Thank you for just continue serving your community and all that stuff. Like our community has been following you since the summer. Like I've been just paying a little bit more attention to local government and all that stuff. So thank you so much for being here. And we'll continue following you. We'll continue to follow your achievements. Like I said earlier, you're a very well accomplished person. And we'll continue to be inspired by your work. So thank you so much for being here. And I hope our conference attendees really got out what we wanted them to get out. So thank you so much for being here again.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate all of you. Thank you.
So before I move on to the last section of the day, I'd just like to quickly make some quick thank you to the OUHSC colleges and their deans for like all their support for helping us get this conference together, and the Office of Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement. Dr. Salinas and his staff were very amazing in helping us get all that stuff, all the stuff we needed. OU Health was very instrumental as well, so thank them for that. All of our volunteers, thank you for your time and ideas. We really appreciate you guys. And last but not least, thank you for our exec team for all the hours and just like creativity, especially like COVID and all that stuff going on. So thank you guys so much. And thank you to everyone that came and just gave us your time and just came and listened. So we appreciate all of you guys for that. And lastly, we're gonna have a post survey. And if you're getting outro hours, again, you have to like fill that out for you to get your hours. So be on the lookout for that. I think your moderators should bring that up again. So now I'll pass it to Tram because she has some stuff to show you guys.
Hey, hi everyone again. So we're gonna have a quick 5-minute break before we transition into the afternoon sessions. So we have 4 afternoon sessions this, this afternoon, and it'll be the same process as this morning. So I will open the breakout rooms for those afternoon sessions. We have Dr. Gibran Pasha speaking about implicit bias, Kaylee Dodson and Julie Garner from Restore OKC, Dr. Priya Samat speaking about free medical clinics and COVID, and Jenna Mori speaking on behalf of Remerge OKC. So once I open those at 2:40, you will have the ability to join the breakout room of your choosing. So again, bottom right-hand corner, you see the breakout rooms option. Click on that, find the speaker that you want to watch, and then pan on over to the right side of the panel, and it should have the join option. All right, see you guys in 5 minutes.